Yes.
Good morning, Mr. Tallon. Good morning, Haley. It's like a flight attendant. Hey, Michael. Okay.
Mike.
You doing good?
Yeah, good to see you, man. This Charlie, you can let me have one. Really? As many as you need. I just got two in a truck. That threw me all the way off.
Hey, Todd.
Dog, where'd you get a
Isolate.
draft?
No, I didn't. Snowstorms and everything else, and the cold and everything else.
Yeah.
Do you have a new baby, Michael?
I do, 4-month-old. As of, it's the whole crew.
Oh.
They're living their best life.
Say 13 months?
4 months. 4 months. I wish it was 13. I could sleep if it was 13.
Well, then they just move around. You can't put them in one place.
We're in that phase where we get her to sleep and then you're paranoid, like, are you breathing? And then, then you don't rest at all. So,
Oh my gosh. And then they're recording.
Yes.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Appreciate your attendance to May 15 KRT board meeting. Do a quick roll call, make sure we have a quorum.
Yes, so representing Kanawha County Commission, we've got Todd Goldman, Valerie Gaynor, Dave Snodgrass, and Michael Farmer, all present. Representing the city of Charleston, we have Mr. Tom Tolliver, Heidi Bonnet Adams, and Bobby Scribe joining us electronically. Representing Montgomery, we have Maurice Anderson joining us electronically. Representing the city of Nitro, we have Mayor Dave Criswell representing electronically. And representing South Charleston, we have Gene Arthur electronically. We have 5 out of 8 partners present and a quorum.
Okay, wonderful. Were the meeting minutes sent out? Because I just realized that my packet doesn't have them.
Yeah, mine doesn't have it.
And I didn't even think about it until right now.
How should we handle that?
Can we, put that for next, meeting?
Yeah, I was just gonna.
We need a motion on that?
We need to table it. Which doesn't really take any action other than just stating it as table. Okay.
That's all.
I don't think that, I mean, I think it's something that can wait. Okay. So the meeting minutes from April will need to be sent out so that we can approve them at our next meeting.
Yes, they exist, that's my fault.
If Sean took claim, it was his fault.
Brandon made them, yes, I'm positive.
Number 4, employee commendation. Tell us
Yeah,
what happened.
sure. So we want to make sure that we recognize our employees who go above and beyond. And on the evening of April 30th, we had an operator, Cleophas Booth. He actually isn't here with us this morning because he's one of those workhorses who picks up extra work, and that's what he's doing this morning. But we're going to make sure we recognize him after this. But what Operator Booth did was we had another operator who had a medical emergency that night, and Operator Booth diverted his route and went to check on her and stayed with her until Mike Hammock, one of our operations supervisor, was able to show up on the scene. And it was just, it was really nice to hear that an operator had the care and concern for a coworker and a teammate to go out of his way to show up and then stay with her until medical services showed up. And luckily she was okay through the event. But it was just an example for us. We want to make sure we point out individuals who do a fantastic job, and Booth has always been that for us. So I wanted to make sure I noted him in front of the board. We're going to make sure we give him a certificate of recognition and throw him up on social media to be just because we're proud of the work he does. So.
That's great to hear. Okay. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. Then we'll have the financial statements, Jess.
Yes, sir. Good morning, everybody. If you take a look at Schedule 2, which is our statement of revenues and expenses, you'll see our operating expenses exceeded our operating revenues by $1.2 million, which hits right at our average for the fiscal year to date. To be perfectly honest, it was a pretty unremarkable month financially. Nothing out of the ordinary to note. Investments remained steady. As long as we have no surprises in May or June, we are on track to end the year within about $170,000 of our $17.2 million operating expense budget. So we are right on target.
How much is that? Is it 170?
170,000.
And that's also encompassing the $135,000 ambulance that wasn't on our books, correct?
Correct. The $135,000 ambulance was not on our books, so about 35,000. Pretty close. Pretty close. From the levy, we got 776,000 this month, bringing us to 8.9 million so far this year, which is 7% above last year. Also happy to report that we recovered all the funds that we lost through the check fraud that I mentioned last month from Truist. So we have been made 100% whole, and I'm meeting with them tomorrow to get implemented the fraud protection services on our account. So we'll that happening again.
The levy receipts, usually there's a printed statement in here,
It's not-
Oh, it is that.
It's usually just emails or.
but I mean, in the packet, that's usually part of it.
I can just read it.
If you don't mind, just email it. Well, that's neither here nor there for right now, but I don't want to see that here. We'll move on to number 6, invoices in excess of 5,000.
You do not have any invoices in excess of 5,000.
And then we'll go on to insurance report. Kurt.
Good morning, everyone. The insurance report, we were able to close 2 older claims this month. We're still working on several other ones, and hopefully we can start getting the ones from 2022 and 2023 closed here in the next couple of months. As far as workers' comp, I'm happy to report we have no one on workers' comp right now. So
That's a
it's
job.
good.
That's great. Has that happened since you've been here?
No.
And I appreciate Brett and the union working with us too to help get some of those individuals back to work, which saves us all.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brett.
Is there any outstanding from the February 15th? Is there any, we're expecting anything from the last insurance?
We will have 2 additional claims in May. Of course, this report's only until April 30th, but we will have 2 additional ones. So one was pretty minor, and one we're still trying to work through. They happen kind of back to back on us, and that seems like how it goes. We have them coming waves.
Thank you.
All right, operations report. Jacob.
So in April, we saw a 1% decrease in ridership from the previous year. Moving to the fixed route data there on the right, since the service changes took place in February, we've seen a big increase in the on-time performance of the routes. Last month there was 86%, or the on-time performance was 86% on time. The revenue, or passengers per revenue hour also has increased since the service changes. Last month being 12.69 passengers per revenue hour. The demand service side, last couple months we hit over 3 passengers per revenue hour. That's been a first since the last couple of years. Operations report 2. Everything's pretty standard there from previous months as far as the day pass usage and people adopting the Misabi mobile payment ticket option. Operations report 3. We made a slight change on this report. On the bottom there for fiscal year 25, you have ridership by route. We added a section there just to include February through April. So this section will show the cost per passenger since the service changes took place in February. And to the left there is the full fiscal year, year to date, July through April. And to the far left is the previous fiscal year to have comparative analysis there of the cost per passenger.
Yeah, and we'll revisit that table when we get down here later to public hearing updates, but it just goes to show that some of those routes that were inefficient are still, and actually more inefficient now. Some of those hill routes where we've seen some passenger decline, as well as the decrease in frequency.
Tell me about operations in the bike race.
Yeah, so on Monday, the bike race starts. We're moving our city center, our transfer station, to Donnelly Street and Summer Street temporarily. And several reroutes we put in place due to the pass of the bike races. Pretty much the same thing as last year, so we should be set to go, no surprises.
Riders adapted well last year.
Yeah, it went pretty smooth, especially the temporary transfer station at Donnelly Street. Everything went well there. Working with the city to have benches put out so passengers had a place to sit while waiting on the bus. Our supervisors to increase presence to help notify the passengers that are at the city center. You may not have known about the change, but to direct them to a temporary location. Then also at the temporary location to help them find their bus, where the bus is waiting.
Is there any ticketing available at the temporary transfer station?
No, we haven't done that. Something we can look into, but wasn't really a problem last year.
Yeah, so we've had signage up on the buses, we've had it down at the city center. I know when the city sent out their notice yesterday, they included different street closures and changes. So it's become normal for us to shift that to that location, and knock on wood, our passengers and our supervising team have done a great job adjusting.
Okay, that's gonna be chaotic downtown.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, maintenance facility. You doing that, Sean?
Travis, can you have any updates for us, Travis?
No, not this month.
Right.
That's, we did get the 14 transit vans in that we ordered, and Chris and I are working together to get those in service as quickly as possible. We got one back from Fast Signs. They have the KRT Plus decals and numbering on them.
Okay. Are those on the road yet?
No, that's what we're working toward. We just have a few things to put together on them, and
What's the driver experience gonna be going from the cutaways to these transit vans?
it'll probably be a little mixed, but overall, everybody that's looked at them has been really excited. A little bit smaller vehicle, so should be a little bit easier to navigate. And I haven't heard many complaints from drivers.
Nice thing too, from talking to Chris and Travis about this, is these are less of a, not saying that the former cat vans are like Frankenstein together, but they're kind of bits and pieces of different things put together into an ADA vehicle for paratransit. But these are as they come from the factory, so maintenance on them should be a little bit easier for us. They've got some more customizable seating configurations, which so we can learn from passengers' experiences and feedback to change the layout. Chris, do you have any other thoughts on it?
Yeah, the vehicles are, like Sean said, they're all made as one piece instead of coming in as a chassis and then having a bus body put onto it. So I think that'll that'll lessen maintenance costs. The drivers, I think, will like them a lot better that way. So.
It looks like a friendlier driver experience just from a lay perspective.
Yeah, yeah, the seating where the driver's seat is really open. They can see really well. No obstructions, things like that. So.
What's it life expectancy on those?
A little less, but maybe 5 to 6 years.
Yeah.
So
What is it on the larger buses?
6 to 8. So we run them 10.
But a fraction of the cost from what the big ones are.
Yeah. So a little lighter duty, but that'll go with that. But we did get a free upgrade on that, which is something we don't typically get. They came in with a more upgraded passenger seat than what we ordered. It was like a $2,500 per vehicle increase. The seats are really comfortable in them. So
They'll wear well and be cleanable.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're level 4 fabric, so they're cut resistant, things like that. Really easy to clean.
just don't test that.
Cut resistant.
Not cut proof.
Cut
resistant. Cut resistant.
Yeah.
Anything else, Travis, on maintenance facility or in general?
No, sir.
Okay. Now the meat of the meeting. Jessica's gonna be on cap to talk about our budget for 2026.
Okay, so we met, the budget committee met last Thursday, and we went over this in great detail. So last year we budgeted for about a $1.5 million shortfall, which we're coming close to, and this year is better, not a ton bit better, but it's better. It's 1.1 million is what we're projecting right now. We are looking at ways to cut costs and increase revenues. For instance, we are increasing the amount that we are charging for gas surcharges for people who pump gas and who get gas delivered to cover more of our administrative costs. Our operations budget is reflecting the changes we made to the routes, and it's about $500,000 less. That also includes a 2.5% wage increase that was budgeted for, and we've got 15% we're expecting on PEIA increasing. Another big thing in this budget is we have to renew our fuel contract, so we don't know what our costs are going to be on that. I did budget in for a slight increase on what we're paying now, hoping I'm wrong and hoping it's a decrease. But overall, looking at about 1.1 million at this time. Very high level.
Did we get a cost yet for the county, what we're having to pay for that offset for ambulance service? Yeah, the daily or semi-daily. To transfer here to the ambulance service.
To their small
Yeah,
town.
yeah, what that actually, so I mean,
The actual cost.
we were able to calculate it based on the actual cost per gallon that's transferred. And that's what they are, and what they will be invoiced. Right now, it's set at what, Travis, 14 cents?
Yeah, it's
14 cents per gallon, but it's actually 34 cents is what it ends up costing us. And so the updates in the new fuel contract will adjust to that, so it'll be at cost as far as the fuel delivery price that Precision pays to have that delivered.
But the upcharge to agencies that have these special agreements to have it delivered are gonna pay that, and it's not gonna be spread out amongst all of the.
Oh, no.
Yes, it's directly paid by the entity that has the fuel delivered to them.
Yeah.
So,
Also,
for
I thought
instance,
it was
if the
subsidized.
Yeah.
No, so if the ambulance authority has 1,000 gallons delivered to them at their property, they pay the 34 cent.
Okay, so it's not spread to volunteer fire department. it's
Correct,
in
they're not
there.
eating the charges from the other.
Okay,
users.
I was under.
Correct,
under the
yes,
impression
yes,
that-
we were able to
Okay.
confirm that.
Okay.
Yes.
Why don't you do 2 minutes on the fuel program, so people that don't, what it is
Sure.
we do, because
Yeah.
people may not do
Yeah,
that.
so one of the things that KRT does that people don't think of for a bus company or a public transit agency is we maintain what's called the Kanawha County Fuel Consortium. It was a program created in the 90s. The county commission said, hey, we have all these different agencies that are buying fuel, but they're all going out there and buying it independently. Could we come together as one entity and maybe save some money when it comes to contracting out fuel? So what we do here at KRT with our tanks that are in the back of our maintenance facility is we provide fuel to, what is it, Travis, 100 different agencies?
Yeah, roughly.
Roughly
Yeah,
100, and it's not just county agencies, we have some city entities, we
Mhm.
also have senior services. So if
Nonprofit.
you're sitting here, yeah, you'll watch nonprofit, you'll watch the sheriff's department, they all fuel up here. We also provide satellite fueling locations in Marmet and Nitro that those agencies can also make use of. And what we do is every 2 years we go out with a contract and we're able to say, hey, we're wanting to purchase 1.7 million gallons of fuel. Can we get a lower rate than what if KRT were to go out on their own, or if the sheriff's department or ambulance were to go out on their own? So over the lifetime of this, over the last 30 years, we've saved millions of dollars for the county by administering this program. And now the change that we're talking about this year is since that program's inception, we have had the same rate built into how much it costs us to administer the program. Obviously, things cost more money now than it did 30 years ago. So what we've done is work with the county to say, hey, and to the finance and the purchasing department did a lot of math to say, hey, this is exactly what this program costs us a year as far as time, as far as equipment, overhead, etc. And here is the reflection of how much more the program costs us to administer in 2025 versus 1986. And we were able to send that to the county finance director so that all those agencies could anticipate these changes as they get into the same process we're doing today, which is looking at budgeting. So that was important for us to give them a heads up, but also we want to make sure we're not selling ourselves short when we're performing.
And we also bid out collectively with the city of Charleston, because they're probably the other largest fuel users, so we do it as two entities at the same time to try to build some volume when the bidders come here. And there's always a choice of either doing escalate, de-escalate, which basically you're buying on the stock or the spot market, or you can do a fixed contract, and we've done fixed contracts for probably 12 or 15 years. And there's been some years, I don't recall losing a substantial amount of money, but we've saved a substantial amount of money at times.
Especially during COVID, I remember, because different agencies do it different ways, like Todd said. GTA down in Huntington, they ride the market, and there was a point where they were paying $5 a gallon for diesel, and we were paying $2.20. And that's hard. I can't imagine how complicated or how much guesswork goes into the budgeting process when you have no idea what fuel's gonna cost, because it is a huge component of our budget.
So the budget committee met last week. Valerie, Heidi, Jay, and I were here.
Oh,
No, you were not here, that's right. And so we went over this in detail with Jessica. She presented line by line. All that information was sent out by Excel. Didn't everybody get the same email? Okay, that had the line item for the operating expenses. I mean, unfortunately, we're still operating at a deficit. Fortunately, we're closing the gap on that. So there's gonna have to still be some tough decisions made about how it is that we decrease costs or find sources of revenue. My instinct is that we're gonna have to cut costs before we find substantial sources of revenue. Yes, sir.
I was doing some math.
Oh, okay. You were looking at me in a way
My
like.
gears were just going all over the place.
Like
Like,
you
give me
did.
all my attention.
Well, you look like you had a question ready. So has everybody taken a chance to look at this material, and understand what we're doing? I mean, we're still borrowing from our savings account to operate this facility.
Can I ask what is the amount that's in our savings? To be able to-
Currently about 7 million.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, that's short and long term, right?
So I'm investing
Or like
50%.
8.6 for short and long term.
Okay.
I forget about the investment account, I don't think about it.
Yeah, well, and it's important to distinguish between the two, because when we're trying to put money aside to be able to match any federal funds that we can get to do projects.
Yeah. And so that's the scale. We have a little over 6, and you have 6 million in the capital reserve for that. Maybe it's a dream of getting that federal grant for a new maintenance facility, but in a way, that would be terrifying if we did get that grant, because immediately we would dry up all that money.
And I should point out about the savings account currently, we are still waiting for our operating grant from last year. There was a little bit delayed, so that will go up. The money in the savings account will go up about $3.5 million.
It goes up, and then it goes up with the safety levies, but then every month Jessica pulls about $1 million, pulling our $1 million down, just to maintain operations.
Correct.
Good question.
But if all is equal, then a year from now, we're down to $7.5 million.
Yeah, every
If
year.
the budget's correct.
Yeah.
If you don't do something to change the revenue or the expenses, then inevitably every year that you have a deficit, you're going to drop that.
Correct.
Thankfully, last year, you all made some tough decisions to lessen the impact of that blow. But it's still substantial.
Speaking of which, the route changes, what was the dollar savings that you would attribute to that now that we've seen it in action?
Well, it cut 24% of our service hours directly.
Close to 850, 900,000, I believe, between fuel and wages.
That's annualized?
Annualized, correct.
So we haven't taken full benefit of that yet, because we did it
No.
mid-fiscal year.
We were working on very little data, so right now, it's a big guesstimate based on 2 full months.
But the reason last year doesn't reflect that's because we only put those changes in place in February.
Yes, sir, correct.
Okay.
This may be another discussion that I've missed since I've been out for a while. I know one of the dynamics is really pushing not the KRT plus, but the ride sharing demand. I was reading some of the information on here. I see the increased amounts of requests, net demands, and long term, I think we're looking at saying that could be a revenue. You know, in a sense of saying you're bringing on new people who have not rode the bus before, not just saying it's a public service, but it's new people who may not think about it. I think about December, I had to drop my car off in St. Albans at Mike Chandler's, and I said, I'm just gonna ride a bus back. You know, but it didn't even click in my head that I'm like, this is a viable option for me to do more often as a part of my normal day-to-day life and such. So I know that was a big part. We talked about marketing this to possibly reach people. That could be some kind of revenue that's added in there. Because I also look at the ride shares on here. No one wants to cut routes and stuff, but still looking at Oak Ridge, Beach, South Hill, South Park, Fort Hill. I have families who live in those areas, but they know that they can call the KRT to get them on the main route. That's huge and could potentially save money.
And and that's a great point, Michael. And it's not as much the revenue associated with microtransit, people embracing that, it's the efficiency savings versus what you pointed out, which is how subsidized the fixed route is. So when the fixed route is replaced with the microtransit, that's when you see real savings, is when you're not operating those kind of empty buses around, going out to pick people up. That's where you embrace savings. The service itself is still, on demand is more expensive for us than fixed route, but if you're doing it in that fashion, getting people to the fixed route, it saves a tremendous amount.
Well, I think Michael just pointed something out that needs to be highlighted, which is that those routes that were of most concern show that the subsidy has increased. And it's now overlaid with KRT Plus, so the people that may have been riding the bus before might be using KRT Plus. So if they stop using the traditional routes, then that subsidy is going to continue to go up. That's where we're gonna have to probably look for savings. But all those folks have been given an alternative at this point.
Right.
And there's people that if I live up on top of Edgewood and I wasn't gonna walk 10 blocks down the beach, I can call KRT Plus and see that as a viable option, which is kind of what you're pointing out.
Right. Yeah. I got families about South Park, South Hills, where they're kind of saying, hey, it's not as frequent, but I'm like, well, you're able to call, get ahead, get to. I think it's just a matter of getting that information out, very directly to those individuals so that they know. And in my mind, that's a whole lot easier, especially I've got a family who's got 4 or 5 kids. I'm like, this makes it a whole lot easier rather than waiting there for an hour or so. But
all the ideas that people have to start weeding out costs and educating the public to the services that we've added is going to help build some efficiencies and make this budget look better than it does. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? If not, we need to decide if we're going to adopt the budget or not.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second and a comment. Yeah, let's just do that as a separate item. And I'll just go ahead and say, Sean just pointed out that the capital reserve budget needs to be presented as well. But since we've already have a motion on the table for the operating budget, I'd like to follow through and complete that. And then we'll take on the capital budget. So there's been a motion and a second to adopt the budget as presented. Is there any additional discussion? Is there anybody online today? I forgot to ask.
Yep. Yeah, we have Jean Maurice, Mayor Case Paul, Mayor Summers is also joining us.
Okay.
Yeah, we're here.
Also.
I'm here. We're all here listening.
Okay, glad to have you. I apologize that is there anybody that has any other comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of adopting the budget as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all. We'll just note that Snodgrass had a meeting to go to, so he stepped out. But now the capital reserve budget.
Capital reserve budget on.
Okay, but anyway, but no,
Capital reserve budget is not changing much from fiscal year 2025. There hasn't been a ton of movement. I did add about $400,000, I believe, for what we're anticipating for rolling stock in the latest grant. So I believe it's set. Can you just scroll down just a little bit there, Travis? Yeah, 7.388 is where I have it set now. I believe it was 7.1 for last year, so not a lot of change.
And what that, for fiscal year 2026, the rolling stock equipment security, That is three big buses. So if you remember back in 2022, what was it, 14 big buses, and we haven't ordered buses since then, large buses. So this is three more of those to help maintain it as the others retire. We've ordered a bunch of the smaller vehicles, obviously, but this is back to larger vehicles.
When is it realistic we would receive those, though?
It's about an 18-month overhead. So what we're doing for this time, NEORIDE, the consortium that we're a part of, went out and did an RFP for buses. We are going to be able to jump on that, which is actually going to save us even more than if we had done it ourselves. But we need to, once this is approved, we will go in and put in that order.
I mean, this year, in the next month or two?
Yes, yes.
And we're still 18-month lead time?
Yes.
And then you'll incur the cost at the 18 months, because if it is Gillig, they won't accept, progress payments or anything, so you just pay the full invoice at the end. So you'll probably see that, not in this fiscal year, but in the next.
In 27?
Yep.
Okay. So that's the capital reserve budget. Any questions pertaining to it?
I'll make a motion that it's approved as presented.
Okay, motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and second to accept the capital reserve budget as presented. Any additional discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all. Jessica, good work. I'll be curious to see how well you do on 25 budget, and then we're gonna have over and under for 26 budget.
All right.
And I gave her credit for that, but to have a $17 million budget and land, I know it said 170, but take away that ambulance to land $30,000 within that with all of the variables and the unknowns that we had, like I'm very, very pleased and proud of Jessica's work to make that happen. That's not light. So thank you.
Okay, new business public hearing update.
Yes, my favorite thing, public hearings. What this is related to, and Todd hinted at it, and Michael had some good points that lead us in this direction. And Travis, you want to put that first phase up on the screen? This is the state of, at least the area encompassing Charleston, of KRT currently. So you see the 3 pilot project zones for KRT Plus. You also see the fixed route lines in the varying colors through there. So you see the South Hills, you see Fort Hill, you see all of those areas. After looking at that operations report 3 and that new column there that shows how the subsidies have gone up per passenger, and as Todd mentioned, if people embrace KRT Plus, that just means the fixed route becomes more and more over subsidized at the same time. So what we're looking at doing is really kind of completing the story of, especially as we went through this budget exercise and said, hey, we're still at $1 million deficit. What needs to happen? And this next page is kind of the idea of what we think internally needs to happen. So what you're seeing here are 3 new micro-transit zones for the pilot project. So you're seeing Kanawha City, South Ridge, and South Charleston being turned on. But what you're seeing for the first time is the, Jacob can fill in the gaps here if I miss any, but the South Hills, Fort Hill, Beach Avenue,
Oak Ridge, Woods Avenue, and South Park.
Yeah, Oak Ridge, Woods Avenue, and South Park fixed routes potentially being replaced by these on-demand zones. This is a scenario that would accomplish saving us operating costs. Again, we went out with those public hearings last year and listened to feedback. I think the board made a very thoughtful movements on that, and we tried to limit the impact to our passengers and to watch the data to see how they would respond. I stand by that 5% reduction in ridership versus a 24% savings in cost displays to me that we made a good decision. But I think there's more to be done. When Michael mentioned, hey, does it save us money to operate this microtransit? It does in this world, where the fixed routes, those inefficient fixed routes are replaced with this service. That's when we see savings. When we operate fixed route and microtransit in the same area, that costs us money. So this is a world that saves KRT money, gets us closer to that break-even point. So what I would like to do is go out as soon as we can to have these public hearings, to present this idea conceptually to the public, and then come back to the board with what the feedback is, and then again, as Todd mentioned, some of those changes have to happen in order for us to close that gap on our budget. Notice to have a public hearing. This will be a little bit different than the last public hearing was a comprehensive operational analysis that had a whole bunch of ideas, and we were asking, hey, what are your thoughts? What's your feedback? This is a little bit different. I know the answer. It's pretty clear to me that this is what has to happen. It's not something we are excited about, but I think the nice part is that everyone who has that service has had the opportunity to have public transit in some capacity with this new microtransit option. So I want to make the board aware of that. We haven't nailed down a date. We weren't going to do that before we talked to you all, but it's something that I think administratively we have to go down this route in order to next year present to you a healthier budget.
And which routes where's that again?
Pick who we do.
Oak Ridge, Worth Avenue, Beach Avenue, South Hills, Fort Hill,
South Park.
and South Park.
And those other routes, and remember when you look at that table of operations report 3, what is considered a healthy public transit route is around $5 per passenger as far as the subsidy. We're nowhere near it on those. I mean, some of those are 8 times that. You can't look at any scenario and say those make fiscal responsible sense to operate. It's just, we've done them for years, but it doesn't mean that we should have.
So general time frame would be the next 2-3 months
Yes.
that we would have the hearings?
Yeah, having the meeting the next 2 or 3 months, if change happens, we have what we call markups, which is several times a year where our drivers go and pick routes, based off of schedules that Jacob and his team are able to develop. That next October would be the goal. In order for that to happen, a decision would have to be made by the board rather quickly, probably by August, in order for Jacob's team to make the changes internally and present them to Brett. Because I think today is the markups being presented to you, this current markup.
The markup's done how frequently?
3 times a year,
At least
about every 4 months.
Okay.
Give or take. That's based on the contract language.
Okay. Anything else on public hearings?
Nope, I think, and again, it's just a little different this time than it's clear from even just the 2 or 3 months of data we've seen that something like this has to happen. Because again, we'll be happy to stand up there and do as many of these meetings as we have to. It won't be a pleasant experience, and it's understandable because it impacts people's lives, but I am happy and proud that we've done the background work to be able to provide a service at the same time as saying, hey, we're replacing it with this.
When we do these public hearings, I know that it's public and stuff, I was thinking about even some groups and entities bringing in social services, people who we know who frequent these routes. That's a conversation I had on another board. They were saying, hey, these routes have been cut, and I wanted to stop and say, well, there's an alternative, and go into a whole speech, but I was like, not the time or the place, but trying to think of that as a way that we find partners within the community to also advocate for this.
That's a good idea, Michael. So we, last month, or 2 months ago, we sat down with Family Care. So as an example of an entity that said, hey, some of the changes you've made are impacting our clients, can we better understand that? So I think it's a great idea. It's something we can schedule. In addition to the public hearing is like a stakeholders meeting where we just bring in an open call to all these different service providers and say, hey, here's some of the changes, some of the things we've done. Because it's not only is it the changes, but it's really making them aware of programs we have in general. They were shocked at the half-fare cards for senior citizens. They didn't know about the veterans program that got them in Jan Dill's Operation Transportation. So anytime we have a chance to sit down and talk about our programs is a good thing. So what we'll be happy to do is set up a stakeholders meeting and invite it, and I'll ask around to the board members too, if you have suggestions or contacts of people who would benefit from this.
Yeah,
Let them know that.
Very good idea. Anybody sign up to make public comment?
We did not have any public comments.
Well, unless anybody has any other questions or comments, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you.